The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome back. I know that was a fun morning. I am Nancy Williams. I'm the Special Populations Assessment Manager. Actually, forgot assessment there. Special Populations Assessment Manager. I'm in the Office of Districts and Schools on the assessment team. Before I came to the state, I've been to the state now 8.5 years. Oh, like it's kind of one of those people you look around and go, ooh, I'm one of the last left. Before I went to the state, I taught for over 20 years in classrooms pre-K through 8th grade. And my first teaching experience was in an ESL classroom. I am ESL endorsed, proud of that. First 5 years of teaching was in McAllen, Texas. Nobody used to know where McAllen, Texas is. Now everybody knows where McAllen, Texas is because of the news. But yeah, so this is just part of how my career has always been. I've got multiple endorsements, but ESL was where I first started, where I first really developed my teaching. And so now to be in the assessment side of it is actually quite a privilege, kind of see the full scope of why we have the crosswalks and where we're going with everything. I don't know if you know, but the crosswalks that you have, you were handed it for free. It wasn't free to produce. Raven did an amazing job organizing people, getting people paid, getting people into hotels. The state of Tennessee paid a lot of money for that document. And so when you go to people with it, it's not just like they threw this together, because they needed something to do. I'm sure at the state, they don't do anything. No, it was thought of the instant we were looking even at the contracts. It was the thought of, if the standards change, what's going to happen? How are we going to do this? How are we going to support the teachers? So assessment doesn't live in isolation. We don't want it to. We really do want it to be kind of a part of and a support of what you do. So let me just kind of give you some figures. ELPA21, last year was our first year. Y'all administered 22,000 screeners. That's pretty impressive. I'll tell you about what the not impressive part was in a minute, but that was impressive. We did over 3,000 test transfers. That's a lot. ELPA21 says other states do a handful. So I'm going to tell you how you could do better with that, because that's a not so happy number. Y'all administered 83,000 tests to students. So all 4 domains together. 83,000 students were assessed with a summative. So if you were wondering why you were tired after 2 months, that's why. That is a lot of students. You did a great job assessing. I processed, and I do mean because if you're wondering, when you go to your district people and they're like, well, we have to send it to the state. Who is this nebulous state person that looks at IEPs and 504s and ILPs and says, yes, you can have a domain exemption, or no, you can't? That is me. I want you to know who I am. I try to be nice. Sometimes I have to say not so nice things to you or let you down, but 244 domain exemptions were processed. That is something we could do with ELPA21. We couldn't do with WIDA. We're very excited about the fact that if we have a student come in who, for example, is deaf, who is nonverbal, we now have ways to screen and assess them on the summative that we did not have before, and we can get those domains exempted, which is awesome. 347 appeals processed. So when you were administering a test and you messed up, but you didn't want to tell anybody you messed up, and you found the appeal button, and you put the stuff in, that lands on my desk too. I know who you are. And the first thing I have to do is contact your district people and say, hey, did you know Nancy submitted an appeal and this is what happened? It's always better that your district people go, yes, I asked them to do it. Here's the background of it. It's never so great when your district people go, what? Why did they do that? Right? So always when you're doing testing, if you think you've messed up, reach out, tell someone. Always better, we can fix it faster that way. So when we looked at all of those tests and screeners and everything that came in, we're like, okay, what were our two biggest problems? What are the two things that if we fix these two things, everyone's life would go better? One of them was getting the correct USID. I know we have 5 different student information systems across the state, and they all feed into the single one there at the state. I can only see the one at the state. I can only see the student's state ID number. I have no idea what the district ID number is. I have no idea how to help you find it in PowerSchool or Skyward or whatever else you have, because that's not what I see or look at. If you don't know what the state ID is, ask someone. It is not a number you typically use. It comes pre-printed on the TCAP labels for you. So when you've just got a student in and you've got to screen them and you need to put in the USID, just putting in like the district ID and filling in with zeros until it will accept it, that's a problem that has to be fixed. That won't work. It's a real number. Reach out, ask somebody. Say, hey, I've got to have the district ID for this. Where can I find that? So that's the biggest thing that would solve a lot of problems. Second thing you as a test administrator can do, follow the training. A lot of those appeals were submitted because the test administrator, whoever was administering the screener or the summative, didn't follow the training. And the reasons they put in there were sometimes kind of interesting. So one of them was student went to lunch. Well, somebody had to let the student go to lunch. That's the first thing I think of when I read that, right? Student just didn't go. Sorry, Miss Williams, I'm headed to lunch now, I'm hungry, and walk out the door, and I didn't do anything about it. No, like that's a test administrator thing. If you were in the middle of TCAP, you wouldn't go, I think we should all stop and go to lunch right now. Like you wouldn't do that. So don't do it when you're screening kids or doing your summative either. Another thing we got quite a bit was student ended the test. Oh yeah, you know that first part that you do, and it's like the practice. Like the lower kids have 6 or 7 questions, the higher kids, I don't know, 7 or 9 questions, something like that. And then you have those 4 questions. Was the student engaged? Those 4 questions. They'll say, student answered those. Student ended the test. I didn't know the student was there. Well, just like with TCAP, it's the job of the test administrator to make sure testing goes correct. It's not the student's fault if the test administrator didn't catch on that that's where the student was. It's not the student's fault that your testing ran up against lunchtime. So we've got a lot of the reasons that came in actually blamed the kids. Student ended the test, student needed to go to lunch, student did it. As a test administrator, you have the power, and it's your job and responsibility to administer the test correctly, right? And just like with TCAP, we say, if you think you're gonna run up against lunch or you're gonna run up against recess, don't start that test. If you think the kid looks kind of green and might throw up at any minute, don't start the test. Because if they go home sick, that's it. We're done. And you really need that information that the screener and the summative is going to give you. And if we mess up testing, we have the wrong information or we have no information. And that's kind of even sadder. So when we get no information back because we had to invalidate it. When we were with WIDA, there was really no way for your district level administrators or us at the state to really delve into what was happening with testing in your room. Especially like with the kindergarten paper screeners, right? Oh, I messed that up. Grab a new one. Nobody don't know, right? Or I got another, you just had them stacked in there and you just used them, made whatever copies. We see everything now. I mean, great for us. Maybe not so great for you. Everything. Your district people can go in and see everything. When you say, student got kicked out of the test, I can tell how many times they got kicked out of the test, how many times they logged on, how long they were in there. So it's very similar to TCAP. And the level of overview you have with TCAP, we now have with ELPA21. And we'll help you as much as we can. But it is up to the test administrator to make sure that ID is correct, whoever's inputting it. So we've kind of made a change to help you out with that. So when we first did ELPA21, we knew you get kids that get screened, you got to put in state ID. And we were like, teachers are busy. They don't have time to go be looking up all these state IDs. We'll have the BTC, the building person help them out. And you know what your districts did? A lot of your districts made you the building test administrator. Wasn't that nice? So instead of having you and a buddy, they were like, no, you're awesome. You can do this all by yourself. And so you didn't have a buddy to go to and ask because they made you the building test administrator. Well, we're going to fix that for you. Now it's going to be at the district level. So your district people have to put in those US IDs. And hopefully that will help you out because that was one of our biggest problems. That was over 3,000 test transfers were because a student tested under the incorrect ID and we had to transfer that to the correct ID. That's not an automated process. It is not a quick process. It involves about 4 people. So when you test a student under the incorrect ID and you find out, oh, that was a mistake, that was wrong, right? You tell your district people. They fill in the online form. Ping goes my email. I go and I look up both IDs in our state level system because we've had requests to move them to another incorrect ID. So we learned we have to check them all. We check them. We then tell Cambium, hey Cambium, yes, this is a go. They have a 2 to 3 step process they go through. I get it back. I delete the old profile. That's what it takes to get that score under the correct US ID. So just please do the correct ID first, which is why we're just taking it off your plate and giving it to the district people. And now if it's in there incorrectly, you can go, not my fault. Not my fault. I did not do that. I will let you know, every screener cost $4.35. Some of the appeals said, kid didn't need screened, right? So somebody gave a home language survey, then you got a note that says screen this kid, and you're like, okay, I've got 10 minutes, I'll pull the kid in, I'll screen the kid. Kid never needed screened. The communication got mixed up, somebody didn't know what the home language survey was, looked like, whatever. That cost you, as the Tennessee taxpayers, $4.35 every time it happened. Yeah, that's a bummer. Because I would rather the money go toward things like building crosswalks for you. Just screeners last year? Some were correct? Right, we had a few that weren't, but the majority were correct. We spent over $95,000 last year just on screeners. We are happy to do that as a state. We just want to make sure we're screening the right kids and not extra ones. We don't want them testing at times they don't have to test. We don't want that extra workload on you, right? So if it happens, the appeal goes in, we fix it. I just letting you know up front, so maybe it won't happen, right? So my goal here, 2 big things we can fix. Make sure that USID is correct and do your training. And your training tells you who you should test. Your training tells you when to stop after that first part, what those questions should be. Your training tells you what grade levels and grade bands to pick, because we have appeals that we have to redo because we just gave them the wrong grade level. What'd you do? Why? You know, it's always better, we say in testing, it's always better to stop and pause and check your things if you need to. Like I said, I've been in the classroom over 20 years. I've taught in 3 different states. I've done crazy stuff. And I've been there. I know what it's like. There's a million things. This kid's already been in the school system 29 days, and today is 30. Like, if it's not done now, that little red light's going to come on, and someone's going to go, we told you to screen, right? Take a breath. Check if you need to. Make sure it's all right. Tell your administrators, hey, I've got too much on my plate right now. I could use this ahead of time. Communication really is key to make assessments go better for you. So, a couple of things. Good news, right? The training for the screener, so the screener training comes out first. Your training that you've done is valid July 1st to June 30th. same as it was with WIDA. We expected this year's screener training to come out June 25th or July 25th. It came out July 1st. So screener training for the 25-26 school year is active. Your summative training won't be unlocked until December. We do that on purpose. We don't want you to train now at the beginning of the year as all your classrooms and all are coming back, and then by the spring, because remember what we said, top 2 problems, one of them was training. We want to get you trained close to that. So training is now open, which is good. We've got domain exemptions. That actually worked pretty well. And we had quite a number of students that were able to exit this year that had never been able to exit before. They were just stuck in there. So we got those domain exemptions done. When that comes through to me, first thing I do is look at the IEP. And it needs to say on that IEP, domain exemption request, and that's why it's a request. But I have to know that the parents are aware we're saying the child's disability is so intense they cannot participate in a domain. So that's why that's in the IEP. Is it lets me know all parties have involved, and that IEP team included you in the IEP team process, because we don't want you left out of that either. Couple of things ELPA21 allows that we don't. I know they have their own manual that for accommodations. We have an accommodation manual. It kind of gets crazy. So I just wanted to highlight a couple that had come through as issues this year. 20 minutes. I got so many emails about that, 20 minutes. And the reason we did it was it's mirrored what we do on TCAP, right? So if you're testing online and the student has to go to the bathroom, fire alarm happened, things happen. We know things happen. And you've kept the kid in the secure environment. In other words, they ain't talking to their friends, right? That's what secure environment is. They're with an adult, they're not talking to their friends about the test. And you went into the fire drill, whatever. Come back in, log the student back in. If they saw a question, it won't let them go back to it. And I think that's what got a lot of kids this year. They went through, they wanted to see all the questions. Okay, fine. And for some reason then, they had to leave for more than 20 minutes. And when they came back, they were like, it says I've used all my opportunities. I'm going to put in an appeal for that. I need this reset. We asked Cambium. Cambium can go in and say, this kid saw every question. They might not have answered every question, but they saw it. So once they've seen that question, they step away for more than 20 minutes, they are done. They're done. Test is over, just like TCAP, okay? They cannot have a familiar listener. So in Tennessee, we would rather look at the documentation and see if they need to be exempted from a domain, the speaking domain, than do that familiar listener. No translating. I was reading some, I know. Oh, I know. Practice with them. The day before you give the screener, the day before you give the summative, I don't care what you're doing over there. Have fun. Once the test hits, it is English only. That is our state law, okay? And I was reading through like surveys, feedback from one of the trainings I did, and one teacher was like, I love translating the test. It's like, oh, I mean, I'm glad it's anonymous for their sake, whoever that was, but it let me know maybe the message isn't getting out. No translating anything. Just don't do it. If you have a student who has sign language and all they are signing are the directions, you don't need anything special for that. They're just signing the directions. If you want them to sign the whole test, it becomes like a read aloud test when you'd follow those process. One other thing we learned about the domain exemptions, even if it's for the screener, because you can't, I know the screener's like not in 4 separate parts anymore. It's a one thing now. They put all the domains together. You can still exempt domains on the screener. I go in, I mark it, it just pulls out the questions that deal with that domain. But it has to be marked before the student starts the test. That is in the training. And I think with all the training that we had this year, there was just a ton going on. A lot of people missed that because it would be like, oh, I'm going to do the other domains while I wait on the state to approve this exemption. And then they would do the other domains, got the scores back, and were like, why aren't these exempted? Because we didn't apply the exemption before the student started testing. So get the IDs right, follow that training, and just include your district people. That's it. I'm done. Sorry, I always have to get up and tell you the mean news, but there you go. Are you up next?
Thank you, Nancy. I'll just keep saying it over and over. You deserve that many things, Nancy. Thank you, Nancy, again so much for coming and talking to us about our first administration of ELPA21 overall. I think the consensus was this was a great move for Tennessee, and we're excited. I'd like to introduce Joanne Runyon. If you don't know Joanne is the Senior Director of Student Support, no S, of Student Support. She's also the person who manages the manager of English Learner Strategy, that's me, and the manager of statewide dyslexia, and the senior manager of RTI 2AB. So Joanne is here to answer some questions. Nancy is also here. So you see that Padlet code is still there. If you have questions about the first administration of ELPA21 or questions that you want to ask Nancy, she's here to answer those questions as well. I will preface by saying that we're going to use the questions that we had on the Padlet first. And if you have a compliance question, Dr. Hannah Gribble, who's also part of this 4-person team that kind of work with English learners at the department, those questions, you can put it in the Padlet and we'll make sure that those questions get to Dr. Gribble, who wasn't able to be here with us.
Do we have the contact slide, I think, after this?
Yeah.
So they can already see Hannah's email if it's needed.
So Joanne, a lot of folks are asking, they think the crosswalk is great as a supplemental tool to their high quality instructional material, but there are some districts that say in our ELD classrooms, we don't have an adopted HQIM. What do we do?
That's a great question. So as Raven was speaking earlier, I was taking a glance at the Padlet, and I want to go ahead and backtrack and talk about some of the work that Tennessee is engaging with. And by Tennessee, I mean all of the school districts. So last year, if you have had the opportunity to collaborate in your district and be part of this work, the Tennessee Department of Education, along with all Tennessee districts, kicked off Acceleration for All. And so the focus of Acceleration for All is ensuring that every student is a gen ed student first. They have all the supports that they need in their Tier 1 core instruction. And so part of this work is ensuring that students have high quality instruction, but also have access to high quality instructional materials. And to be honest, this is not new work. There is nothing novel about this work, because this work Tennessee has been engaging with for a long time, ensuring that students have what they need in front of them, to have content be accessible, and that everybody has an opportunity to get the supports that they need if additional support is needed outside of that Tier 1 gen ed setting. So for the questions around high quality instructional materials, we do have support in our core regions. So every region has a core. Before they used to be physical offices, but you do have a core representative that is leading this work. I did respond to some folks in the Padlet around questions specifically about HQIM, and I'm more than happy to let you know who your contact is if I just know who your region is. But as Raven presented with Ms. Christina Danko and Dr. Tennyson, the work that you are seeing today with the crosswalk is very beneficial to the work that you are doing in your Tier 1 instruction. So as you think about your students growing, you're thinking about the growth of all your students. In my mind, if I'm the leader of a building, my expectation would be that if I have a gen ed teacher that has an EL in the classroom, that they are getting some support or some training around how to embed the English language development standards for Tennessee, and are able to scaffold instruction, ensure that they're using those access points that are available in your high quality instructional materials so that students can succeed. Being involved with that student work analysis, ensuring that all the right people, like you all here, are part of that intellectual prep. So as you're thinking about how collaboration takes place in your settings, some of us are in different stages. Some of us are still bringing the right folks to the table. Some of us already have scheduled ongoing professional learning communities. Perhaps you have district-wide planning, not just at your school. You get to plan with other teachers, similar grade levels across your district. So everybody's at different stages of this work. But the expectation is that we're talking to one another, I guess in the simplest of terms, that we're planning, that we're working together to ensure, for example, the knowledge that you bring around language development is at the heart of that intellectual prep when you're looking at how students access their high quality instructional materials with those Tennessee academic standards. Our ELD standards are state board adopted. They're part of academic learning for our English learners. So it might seem like this is something in addition. These are standards for our kids, and they need those to ensure that they're growing in their language acquisition, but as well in academics. So ensuring that that is taking place is key. There might be some of you in here that may not know what your high quality instructional materials are, what all is embedded in what your district has adopted. This is one of the shifts and the changes that we are looking forward to with Acceleration for All, ensuring that everyone in the district is informed of what these resources are, what those supplemental pieces are that come with these adoptions, as well as what does intellectual prep look like in our district, what that expectation is. And even to take it a little further, those of you that are already engaging with the Instructional Practices Guide, the IPG, you already have folks that are coming into classrooms, or perhaps you might be a person that's walking into classrooms to see what instruction looks like in the gen ed setting, tier 1, for your ELs. So some of you are even in those stages. Those are some of our more advanced stages. But all of this works together. So I really appreciated the presentation this morning because it's going to push our students further in a good space. When we were looking at those beliefs, I kept going to the beliefs that we all share ownership for our ELs. The expectation should be there across every site. It doesn't matter if I go to a district and I go to one school across the railroad tracks, the other school on the west side of town, whatever that might be, that the expectation is there. Teachers are utilizing those ELD standards, academic standards. We have students with access to their high quality instructional materials, and that students are succeeding. And students are getting those additional supports because we know that some of our students, tier 1, needs to be very strong, right? But we are going to have some students that need additional support. And that additional support is where y'all bring your expertise. You bring your expertise around language acquisition, helping us gen ed teachers, I'm a former gen ed teacher, helping us understand what does language development look like if I have a 5th grader who I know is not a newcomer, however, they're not an exited EL. How do I plan for my student who I knows the information if I have a basic conversation, but how do I shape that academically in the classroom so that they're able to participate with their other peers who might be exited ELs, students who are English only. You might have some students in there that may have additional needs like specialized education, and they need to hear those model responses for students. How do I plan that? What does that look like in the classroom? So you bring that wonderful expertise to work with your gen ed partnerships. And if you're here as a special ed teacher, you also bring that additional expertise because you get more in-depth training around scaffolding and access for students. So the whole purpose of Acceleration for All is ensuring that coherence in instruction from all educators that work with the student. And it is a shift. We've had conversations with some folks and they said, you know, historically we've always operated in silos. So right now we're going through some growing pains. We don't get along, okay, that's a growing pain, right? But we're here to support students and their growth. And so there are going to be some growing pains. I remember those growing pains myself when I was in my district, when there wasn't shared ownership. So it took us a while, and it might feel forced right now, but as you get through working together, planning, ensuring that everybody understands the different data pieces that you're looking at for students, because we just don't look at one data piece, we look at several data pieces, right? And I'm just not talking about TCAP or ELPA21, I'm talking about those common formative assessments or those in-time assessments that you get in the classroom as you're working with students. So all of this plays into this intellectual prep and planning for students. Be patient, but we're going to move forward. As we met last time in May with district leaders, we had in-person meetings. We did get a gauge of where some districts are when it comes to Acceleration for All. We're seeing growth. It might be slow in some places, but I do feel we are making shifts. I know Nancy shared she's been at the department for 8.5 years. I'm going on year 12. And I have seen the shift from when I first started in 2013 to where we are now. Now, I don't know previous to 2013, okay? But this is the first time that I have seen a crosswalk with our ELD standards in alignment to our academic standards. This is huge for Tennessee. And we take every opportunity that we get as we collaborate internally to talk about this good work, because I feel everyone should be talking about these supports, because it's not just peering the standards when you get to see the entire document, it's giving you little hints on what you can do to support students in the classroom. And this year, as we move forward with the new school year, Raven has so much planning going on. She's getting her toolbox ready to really support educators in the classroom. So you're going to see all the great work that she is already planning. She's been working very hard. I think that's all she does. So you're going to see a lot of the support. If you are not sure about Acceleration for All, and if your district is participating, I do encourage you to ask around as you get opportunities to work with your Title III directors, your instructional coaches, your principals. There are different opportunities for everyone in the district. So we have in-person district sessions where your leadership joins, and I've seen several Title III directors present, planning, having conversations around what intellectual prep looks like, what collaborative planning time looks like, what the expectation is. We get to hear the hardships that leadership is trying to overcome to get everybody in a common planning place. But those conversations are real, and we appreciate them because they help someone at the next table plan, because they might not be where this specific district team is. In addition to district team support, there are building level administrator modules and support sessions. So these could be your principals, your instructional coaches. Here shortly, I think, or maybe one's already released, we will have educator modules that build off on the work and conversations that have happened with district leaders, building level administrators, and then what are we doing, boots on the ground, educators, to ensure that we're following the vision for this work and ensuring that everybody is involved as we plan for all students, not just our English learners, but think about your kids that need intervention. They may not need ESL services, but they need some additional tiered intervention support that they just can't get in Tier 1, right? But we want to make sure that the first exposure that students are getting in that Gen Ed Tier 1 content is rich, and that they have the tools needed to engage in that content, as well as any other student in the classroom. So I know that was a very long answer, and I went like in 20 different conversations. Go ahead.
That's okay, Joanne. I want to come over to this side because I tended to hover on that side because the podium is there. But I do want to just do a quick survey of who has heard of Acceleration for All? Who has participated in Acceleration for All work like PLCs and or student work analysis within your district? Who has attended an in-person convening? Okay. So that's good to know. So Joanne kind of told you the the research, the theory, the purpose behind Acceleration for All, I'm going to kind of answer the question that we had in a little more practical sense. So if you don't have a high quality instructional material specifically for ELD, you don't have an ELD curriculum that you're using, maybe you're doing pull-out, maybe you're co-teaching in the classroom. If you don't have one of those, there's a couple of things that you can do. One, start with the high quality instructional material that you're using in your classrooms right now. Go to the general content teacher. Say, I'd like a copy of what you're doing in class, because as you're teaching the content, I'm going to be reinforcing the language that you're teaching in your classroom, and I'm going to be doing that using the crosswalk that I have and the access points that are already built into the high quality instructional material to help reinforce what you're doing in the classroom. Gone are the days where we're doing pull out to just do academic vocabulary front loading and teaching grammar lessons. Now it's all about function. How are students writing and speaking in the content classroom? That's what we should be doing in the ELD classroom, whether it's outside of the content classroom or whether it's in the content classroom. Joanne, we have a question. And Nancy, I'm just going to ask Dr. Clark to get a mic ready for you. I have a couple of questions for you in just a minute.
We have several actually for Nancy that have just been coming in the last 7 to 10 minutes, Nancy.
There was a question about updates about funding, and the funding holds from July 1st. That is a compliance and funding question for Dr. Gribble, so we'll make sure that she gets that question. If you don't mind putting your information underneath that comment so that we'll know who to get back to, we could give you that when she returns.
And I think we have some assessment questions. Raven, is that okay if I kick off here? Okay, so Nancy, I think this is a great opportunity for you to talk about the Assessment Logistics LiveBinder site, because I think that several of the resources that are being requested on the Padlet can be accessed. So for example, read aloud guidance for state assessment, scheduling for assessment.
There's a scheduling for assessment provisioning document on LiveBinders. Now, an assessment, we have a LiveBinders site. It is free, it is open to all, there is no password protected. If you go to your favorite search engine and type in Tennessee LiveBinder Assessment Logistics or Tennessee Assessment Logistics LiveBinder, you will get more information than you ever cared about on assessments. And there's also a link on there to go to the content development side. So if you want to see what's happening on TCAP development, you can link through there also. So Tennessee Assessment Logistics LiveBinder. It's going to come up LiveBinder. It's going to have blue around it because we think you need a calming color when you're coming to ask questions about assessment. Okay. In there, if you go to the search in the top right, you can type in ELPA21. And you can have all kinds of information. Any webinar that I have done or slide deck that I have made, if it is recorded, it is there. In fact, I just did a webinar called Looking Back and Looking Forward for ELPA21. It's already posted there. I did it in June. It was posted the first week of July. So we can get stuff there much faster than we can on the regular website. And I know a lot of times assessment information is very time sensitive. You can also access all the past year's accessibility and accommodations manual. In the back of that manual is guidance about how to do read aloud. We have a lot of questions about, well, they're getting read aloud as an accommodation, so don't they automatically get extended time? Don't they automatically get extended time on TCAP because they're an English learner? Accommodations are not automatic. One disability does not automatically trigger an accommodation. It is up to the team to determine, okay, the student's getting read aloud. Do they also need extended time? Especially since at the state we have that requested or optional time, where a kid can just go, I need more time. And it's already written in the manual, it's 20% and all that's good for you. When you're reading charts and graphs and you're doing that read aloud, you can't read aloud anything that would give away the answer. So for example, you have a bar graph. Read the title of the bar graph. But if you read what each one of those bars were, you would be giving away the answer. You don't read what the bars would be. Okay? So that's kind of a good rule of thumb if you're like, oh, I don't have this in front of me. For example, if you're reading a mathematical formula and it says 6 is less than 12 and the symbol is there, well, you can't read 6 is less than 12, even though that's what the symbol means, or you'd give away the answer. So you say 6, symbol, 12, because the kid still has to know what that symbol means. So that type of information is in the back of the Accessibility and Accommodation Manual. Last year's is still posted. I have updated this year's. It is still under Legal and Comms Review. So it'll take a while before it makes it there. Not a lot of huge changes, but for the read aloud, I'm sorry, am I talking too much? I'm just, okay. Okay, so for read aloud, last year's manual said if they had a certain number on WIDA, reading domain, they would not be recommended for a read aloud accommodation because the company that wrote a test to see if they could read English is saying they're reading English on grade level. That's what that score means. That's been updated to ELPA21's score. So now that you have summative scores from the spring, as you go back to school this fall, when you're thinking about, okay, we need to write the ILPs, do we need the read aloud accommodation or not? Look back at that ELPA21 reading domain score. If it is 4 or above, they're considered proficient in that domain in reading. The student should not need read aloud. And if they're getting read aloud with you in the ESL classroom on everything, they should be getting it in the regular room too, right? Because the accommodations are to access the content. And if the team that you're a part of does not agree on that read aloud accommodation, please solve that before the parent shows up. It's always good to have a united front, right? But you're part of that conversation. And if you say, they always need this accommodation in my classroom, why is it not happening in the regular room? Maybe you need to go do an observation in there. Maybe the student is just enjoying their time with you, right? And they don't need it anymore.
Nancy,
not off the hook yet. Okay.
We do have a question. We have about 2 minutes before we wrap up.
Okay.
But the question is, we got to do this fun thing and collect consents before doing this screener and summative today. So can you give me any update on obtaining consent to record students?
I sure can. It is in the Looking Back and Looking Forward webinar. So if you want to go see the official law, there is a slide in there that has the TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated Law. They have amended that law. We no longer have to get parental consent before screening and doing the speaking domain. Yay! There's another law in there on the very next slide after you see that slide that talks about the new law having to do with how long you have to transfer records. So go look that one up.
I do know that there are some more questions that are coming in, and Joanne is typing out answers to those. We will answer your questions even if we don't get to it today. And so let's see.
We have some new ones at the bottom.
Testing. It looks like a lot of these are testing questions for Nancy. And so I think Nancy will be answering the Padlet and replying back to you. But again, Nancy's contact information is on the screen. So if you have questions about testing that you don't want to put in the Padlet and you just have questions, what we do ask is that Nancy is generally the contact person with your district testing coordinator. And then your building testing coordinator contacts your district testing coordinator. Generally, it moves up the chain like that. But if you have a specific question that's not answered, Nancy is being generous with her email today. You can ask a question, and she may refer you back to your testing building or district testing coordinator.
So we have a question here. Do I have 30 seconds? It basically talks about the early stopping rule on that screener, because that's what that first part is. It's like the practice, and if they can't answer them, just make sure you're using the correct screener. So if you go through that if you have a new student you've never seen before, have no information on, you think they're nonverbal or that you think they have a significant cognitive disability, and you go through that practice part of the regular screener and you find out, yeah, that's a good data point, we definitely should have given that alt screener, give the alt screener. Don't go through the whole regular screener and then do it. but if you've done the practice and the student cannot participate because of a suspected significant cognitive disability, you don't have to have the IEP in place yet to bump over to that alt screener. And that's all laid out if you go to LiveBinders and look up some of the information about ELPA21.
Dr. Clark, thank you so much for allowing us to come today. Again, we will type out some answers for you in the questions.
Yeah, we'll get to all the assessment questions, everyone. Just allow us some time to crunch in some responses. But
thank y'all, because this is like a once or twice a year opportunity for y'all to get these questions directly to them. So thank you for the questions. Thanks for all this information. Nancy, a big thank you to you, because it seems like a lot of it was coming right to your area. So thanks for being here, y'all. Let's